Christine Gallegos was just 80, full of dreams, working her way through life in a quiet Utah town. A student, a friend, a daughter, someone everyone thought would grow up in safety. On one ordinary evening in May 1985, she left for work like any other day, but she never came home. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through a close-knit community, leaving family and friends desperate for answers that wouldn't come. Not for decades. Picture the streets of Provo in the mid-80s. It's a dimly lit roads, few cars passing by, and the sound of silence stretching across the night. A young woman, alone, walking along a remote path, unaware that danger was lurking nearby. Witnesses would later recall a suspicious vehicle in the area, but back then, no one could piece together what had happened. It was a night that would become a mystery for nearly 40 years. A story frozen in time. The investigation began immediately, but the trail went cold fast. Officers searched tirelessly, questioned witnesses, scoured every inch of the area, but the evidence was scarce. The leads vanished. Decades passed, technology advanced, and yet Christine's fate remained a puzzle. What if I told you that the breakthrough came not from old-school detective work, but from a new kind of science that could reach across decades and uncover secrets that no one thought could be solved? Before we dive deeper into Christine's story, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and share. Stay with us till the end, because this isn't just a cold case. It's a journey through suspense, hidden clues, and the relentless pursuit of justice. You'll want to see how every twist finally comes together, and you won't want to miss a second. Utah, May 1985. The air was dry, the sky a pale blue, and the streets of Provo carried the quiet rhythm of small-town life. Teenagers biked to school, neighbors waved to one another, and life felt, for most, predictable. But for Christine Gallegos, 18 years old, that ordinary evening would mark the beginning of a mystery that would haunt her community for decades. Christine wasn't just any teenager. She was diligent, bright, and full of ambition. A high school graduate working part-time to save for college, she had dreams bigger than the town she grew up in. Friends described her as warm, kind, and fiercely independent. That independence, that willingness to take on the world, is what led her to hitchhike that evening. It was a Friday night, and Christine was heading to her job, a place she'd worked for months, and where her co-workers admired her dedication. She waved goodbye to her mother, exchanged a smile with her younger brother, and set off along the dimly lit road. The route she took was familiar, yet isolated. The kind of road where passing headlights are few, and shadows linger longer than they should. Minutes turned into hours, and Christine never returned home. Her absence didn't immediately trigger alarms. Small-town teens sometimes stayed late at work, sometimes walked friends home. But as night deepened, unease settled in. Calls to her workplace yielded no answers. Her mother, increasingly worried, contacted friends, then neighbors, then the local police. And just like that, a missing person case began. The initial investigation painted a troubling picture. Christine had been last seen hitchhiking, a risky choice even then. Witnesses recalled a dark-colored vehicle slowing near her, though details were sparse and fleeting. Police canvassed the area, spoke to locals, and sent patrols down the long stretches of rural roads. Searchlights cut across empty fields. K9 units combed the underbrush, calling out to nothing but the wind. For the first few days, Oprah remained. Then, as leads ran cold, fear set in. Despite their best efforts, the officers faced limitations common in 1985. DNA evidence was a concept, not a tool. Surveillance cameras were rare in small towns. Fingerprints, while useful, were often smudged or absent. The investigation relied on witness statements, timelines, and intuition. Yet, in the absence of concrete evidence, time became the enemy. Days passed, weeks, and then months, with no answers. The case began to feed from the headlines. Yet for Christine's family, the pain was relentless. Her father refused to accept the unknown. Her mother held vigil in her bedroom, staring at a calendar. Marking each day, Christine remained missing. Friends whispered about what might have happened, each theory darker than the last. And in the shadows, the town's collective anxiety grew, turning small acts of curiosity into whispers of fear. But here's the twist. Decades later, The same evidence that once frustrated investigators would finally illuminate the truth. Modern forensic technology, genealogy, and relentless dedication would intersect to solve a mystery thought unsolvable. Christine's story, frozen in time for 40 years, was about to be rewritten. This first chapter isn't just about a disappearance. It's about a life interrupted, a family fractured, and a community forced to reckon with its darkest fears. It sets the stage for an investigation that spans generations, highlighting the limits of past police work while hinting at the breakthroughs of the future. In this story, every road, every shadow, every witness holds a piece of the puzzle. And while Christine vanished in 1985, the pursuit of truth never did. 40 years would pass, but the question remained: who was responsible for her untimely death, and how would justice finally arrive? By the end of this video, you'll see how persistence, technology, and human determination brought closure to a case long thought impossible to solve. But before that, we need to step back and understand Christine the Gill behind the headlines, the life before the disappearance, and the eerie setting of Provo, Utah. In 1985, her story deserves every detail, every shadow, every heartbeat of suspense. Because in cold cases like this, it's never just about the crime. It's about the life it stole and the decades-long chase to uncover the truth. Utah in 1985 was a place of contrasts. Small towns like Provo were serene, almost picturesque, with tree-lined streets, modest homes, and a community that prided itself on familiarity and trust. Life moved at a slower pace compared to the bustling cities elsewhere, and everyone knew everyone else. It was in this quiet backdrop that Christine Gallegos slipped. Teenager whose energy and ambition stood out even in such a close-knit town. Christine's life was a tapestry of responsibilities and aspirations. By day, she worked at a local diner, pouring coffee and serving meals with a smile that never wavered, even during the long shifts. By night, she studied, dreaming of college courses that could take her far from the narrow confines of Provo. Her friends admired her tenacity. Her teachers noticed her intelligence. She wasn't perfect like all teenagers. She faced small struggles, but she carried herself with a maturity beyond her years. Her family described her as the heartbeat of their home. Her mother often recalled Christine's laughter echoing through the hallway, while her younger brother idolized her in ways only siblings can. Her father, a quiet man with a steady job, watched her with pride, sometimes worry, as he sensed her growing independence. That independence, the very trait that made her special, also made her vulnerable on that fateful May evening. Provo in 1985 had its own unique rhythm. Streets were lined with parked cars from the early 80s. Neon signs flickered softly outside diners, and the occasional pickup truck rumbled along the highways connecting the town to more remote areas. Crime was relatively rare, which made incidents like Christine's disappearance all the more shocking. The town had a sense of safety, a trust in neighbors and strangers alike, which made her decision to hitchhike that night seem routine to her but dangerous in hindsight. Social life for teenagers revolved around school, part-time jobs, and community events. Christine had friends who played basketball, others who hung out at arcades or movie theaters. Yet she was determined to keep moving forward, balancing her work and studies while nurturing ambitions that went far beyond Provo's borders. Her character combined intelligence, warmth, and an instinctive curiosity about the world. She wanted to explore, to grow, to make a life beyond what the town could contain. On that May evening, Christine's path seemed ordinary. She carried her purse, a small notebook, and a quiet confidence that she would reach her destination safely. But Utah's landscape in 1985 held unseen dangers, long stretches of highway, dimly lit roads, and sparsely populated areas where a single encounter could change everything. The serenity of her town and the promise of everyday life masked the vulnerability of a young woman traveling alone. Even the people around her couldn't have predicted the chain of events that would unfold. Friends who said goodbye didn't suspect they would never see her again. Co-workers who exchanged jokes that morning would later recount the absence of her laughter with a sinking dread. And her family, accustomed to the rhythms of small-town life, felt the first sharp pang of fear when hours passed without a word. This chapter isn't just about geography or daily routines. It's about establishing the life Christine left behind, a life full of promise, ambition, and connection. Every friend she had, every place she visited, every small detail of Provo's streets adds depth to the mystery. The audience needs to feel who she was, not just what happened to her. Understanding the person before the crime makes the investigation and eventual resolution far more compelling. As we look closer at Christine's life, it's clear why this case gripped the community for decades. It wasn't just a disappearance. It was the interruption of a life full of hope, potential, and the kind of ordinary magic that makes small towns feel safe. That contrasts the normalcy of her life, and the darkness that followed sets the tone for the investigation that will unfold. In small towns like Provo, when someone vanishes, the ripple effects touch everyone. Christine's friends and family were not just victims of circumstance. They became participants in a narrative of suspense, fear, and relentless questioning. And while her life would eventually be defined by tragedy, it is essential to remember the vibrancy she brought into the world, the laughter, the ambition, and the human moments that make her disappearance so haunting. This chapter closes with the understanding that Christine's story is not only about a crime, it is about a life interrupted, a world altered, and a community left to grapple with questions that would remain unanswered for decades. The stage is now set for the fateful night of May, 1985, where the ordinary would collide with the extraordinary, leaving a mystery that would challenge investigators for generations. The evening of May 15th, 1985, began like any other for Christine Gallegos. She finished her homework, had a quick dinner with her family, and gathered her belongings for the short walk to her part-time job. Her mother remembered the brightness in her eyes. Her father noticed the slight nervous excitement, and her younger brother teased her about being late. But none of them could foresee that this ordinary evening would become the most haunting night in their lives. Christine left home around 6:30 p.m. Walking along streets she had traveled countless times. The neighborhood was calm, shadows stretching across the pavement as the sun dipped behind distant mountains. There were few cars on the road, and the air carried the scent of spring fresh grass, distant barbecue smoke, and the faint hint of city life. She carried only a small purse, tucked securely under her arm, and a notebook with class notes she intended to review during breaks at work. As she walked toward the main road, Christine made a decision that would prove critical. She chose to hitchhike, a common practice in the area, though now understood to be risky. She raised her thumb to the passing cars, hoping for a friendly driver to offer a lift. Witnesses would later recall a dark-colored vehicle slowing near her, its windows reflecting the fading sunlight. The driver's face, however, remained unclear. Few could remember details beyond the shape of the car and the fleeting moment when Christine disappeared into the vehicle's shadow. Time passed, and Christine never arrived at her job. Co-workers noticed her absence, initially assuming she had been held up or delayed. But as minutes became hours, concern turned to alarm. Calls home went unanswered. Her parents began searching the streets, questioning neighbors, and retracing her steps. The quiet hum of the town was replaced by tension, whispers, and the growing dread that something had gone terribly wrong. The initial police response was swift, but hampered by the circumstances. The rural stretches of road offered few clues. Witnesses could recall little, and no physical evidence immediately pointed to a suspect. The town's limited resources, common in the mid-1980s, left investigators reliant on door-to-door canvassing, interviews with friends and family, and the intuition of seasoned officers. Maps were drawn, patrols dispatched, and search parties organized. The clock ticked, and with every passing hour, the sense of urgency intensified. Investigators quickly noted the potential danger posed by the isolated route she traveled. It was a stretch where headlights were rare, and the landscape rolling hills. Scattered trees and small clusters of homes provided ample cover for someone with malicious intent. Officers retraced her steps multiple times, scanning the roadside, checking abandoned buildings, and asking travelers if they had seen a young woman hitchhiking alone. Yet the hours yielded nothing definitive. The combination of isolation, a fleeting witness report, and the unknown identity of the driver created a perfect storm for a cold case to form. Even within the first 24 hours, investigators realized the challenge. A small town, limited technology, and virtually no physical evidence. By nightfall, searchlights and K9 units scoured the area, calling into the darkness for a response that never came. Residents joined the effort, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. Yet all that was found were tire tracks fading into the dirt, and the lingering fear that someone unseen had crossed paths with Christine. Neighbors who might have noticed the vehicle were interviewed repeatedly, Friends recounted every detail of the day, from classes attended to small interactions on the street. Police documented each story meticulously, hoping that patterns or inconsistencies might reveal a clue. But as the hours stretched into days, frustration mounted. Christine's disappearance was not just an event, it was a mystery unfolding before the eyes of everyone who knew her. This night, seemingly ordinary, marked the moment when Christine's life intersected with danger. A decision to walk, a choice to accept a ride, and the rural Utah landscape combined to create circumstances that would leave the town shaken for decades. Every detail of that evening, the streets, the vehicle, the fleeting glimpses of a passerby would later become critical pieces in the investigation, essential for the breakthroughs that modern technology would eventually provide. May 15th, 1985, was not just the night Christine vanished. It was the night a small town learned how fragile safety could be, how quickly life could change, and how a single evening could echo through generations. The events of this night set the stage for a long, relentless search, a journey that would span decades before the truth was finally revealed. When Christine Gallegos failed to return home that night, Provo police quickly launched an investigation. Officers arrived at her home, spoke to her family, and began tracing her last known steps. The urgency was palpable. The town had never faced a disappearance like this, and the pressure on local authorities was immense. Every detail mattered. Every observation could be the key to solving the mystery. The first step was to interview friends, co-workers, and neighbors. Officers asked precise questions. Did anyone see her that evening? Had she mentioned plans or worries? Witnesses recounted glimpses of her walking along the roadside and the suspicious dark-colored vehicle that slowed nearby. But details were limited and often contradictory. Memory, even in small towns, can blur quickly, and with so few witnesses. Every piece of information was scrutinized carefully. Investigators also canvassed the area where she was last seen. Roads were examined, local businesses visited, and residents questioned about unusual activity. Patrols combed the streets, flashlights in hand, and canine units scoured nearby fields and wooded areas. Officers hoped to find evidence, anything that could point to a suspect. Yet the rural Utah terrain, with its rolling hills, scattered homes, and hidden paths, made the search challenging. Clues were scarce, and every hour without progress heightened the sense of urgency. A critical focus was the vehicle reported by witnesses. Its description, a dark-colored car, possibly a sedan from the early 1980s, was circulated. Officers checked vehicle registrations and interviewed owners who matched the profile. Local mechanics and taxi services were questioned, hoping someone had noticed unusual activity or offered a ride to Christine. Even with diligent work, no definitive match emerged. The fleeting encounter with the driver remained elusive, a ghostly detail that would later become crucial in understanding the case. Detectives revisited similar cases in nearby towns, analyzing patterns that might connect them to Christine's disappearance. Although Utah had few violent crimes at the time, investigators were aware that predators could operate unnoticed in small communities. Reports of hitchhiker disappearances and attempted abductions were compared to her timeline, but nothing concrete aligned. The investigation demanded patience, thoroughness, and an understanding that small clues could eventually reveal the bigger picture. Physical evidence was minimal. No murder weapon was found. Trace elements along the roadside were inconclusive. In 1985, DNA testing was not available to assist investigators, and fingerprint analysis yielded no significant matches. Officers relied heavily on intuition, experience, and witness statements. They meticulously documented every lead, no matter how minor, building a framework for a case that, at the time, seemed almost unsolvable. As days passed, the community became deeply involved. Volunteers joined search parties, combed the hills, and offered tips to authorities. Newspapers reported her disappearance, highlighting the danger of hitchhiking and appealing to anyone who might have seen Christine. Yet the more attention the case received, the more complicated it became. False leads emerged, and the sheer number of potential suspects and sightings overwhelmed the small police department. Despite the challenges, the investigation uncovered critical patterns. Witness reports, vehicle sightings, and known routines were meticulously cross-referenced. Officers tracked phone calls, monitored traffic in surrounding towns, and collaborated with nearby law enforcement agencies. Each avenue was explored, every stone unturned, yet the case remained frustratingly open. The urgency to solve Christine's disappearance never waned, even as the investigation revealed the limits of 1980s forensic capabilities. The first week of the search ended without resolution, leaving detectives frustrated and the community anxious. Days turned into weeks, and as the investigation continued, officials realized that solving this case would require more than traditional police work. Every lead, every statement, every observation mattered, but without technological advances, the mystery of Christine Gallegos could remain unsolved indefinitely. This phase of the investigation highlights the challenges detectives faced in 1985. Limited forensic tools, scarce physical evidence, and a fleeting witness account. Yet it also demonstrates their relentless dedication and methodical approach, laying the foundation for breakthroughs that would come decades later. First leads may have failed, and dead ends may have multiplied, but the pursuit of justice had only just begun. As weeks turned into months, the investigation into Christine Gallegos' disappearance began to stall. In 1985, the tools available to law enforcement were limited, and the case was plagued by frustrating gaps in evidence. Without clear physical clues or a reliable witness, leads dried up quickly. Each promising avenue seemed to end in a dead end, leaving detectives and the community with more questions than answers. The first challenge was technological. DNA profiling, now a cornerstone of modern investigations, was virtually non-existent. Fingerprints were often smudged or absent. Surveillance cameras, rare in small towns, offered no footage. Investigators relied heavily on witness statements, intuition, and door-to-door canvassing. While these methods were thorough, they couldn't compensate for the absence of tangible evidence. Another complication was the fleeting nature of key witness information. Those who reported seeing a dark-colored vehicle near Christine that night struggled to recall details over time. Memories faded, descriptions conflicted, and investigators faced the frustrating reality that time itself was eroding the case. Each passing week made the trail colder, the witnesses' recollections less reliable, and the hope for an immediate resolution dimmer. The community, once deeply involved in search efforts, gradually returned to daily life. Neighbors who had combed hillsides and roadways resumed their routines. Volunteers who had helped police organize searches were pulled away by work, school, and family responsibilities. While concern remained, the urgency faded. Christine's absence became a lingering shadow, a painful reminder of how quickly hope can be tested. Family members endured the emotional toll. Christine's mother held vigil in her daughter's room, replaying the last moments she saw her. Her father grappled with helplessness, questioning every decision he had made as a parent. Her younger brother, forced to grow up amid uncertainty, struggled to understand why life had taken such a cruel turn. Their grief was compounded by frustration despite police efforts. No answers had emerged. Investigators continued their work, albeit at a slower pace. They revisited leads, followed up on tips, and compared the case to similar disappearances. Yet every trail seemed to lead nowhere. The isolated roads of Utah, while scenic, provided countless opportunities for a perpetrator to operate unseen. Each unanswered question added layers to the mystery, reinforcing the chilling reality that some cases could remain unsolved indefinitely. The social climate of small-town Utah also played a role. In communities where trust is fundamental, the idea that someone could commit such a crime was almost inconceivable. Neighbors doubted their observations. Witnesses questioned whether their accounts would be taken seriously, and law enforcement navigated the delicate balance of maintaining public confidence while investigating thoroughly. These factors, combined with scarce evidence, made the case particularly challenging. Despite these obstacles, detectives documented everything meticulously. Every statement, every lead, every search effort was logged for future reference. They knew that even if the case went cold, it could one day be revived. This meticulous record-keeping became crucial decades later, when modern forensic methods would intersect with historical evidence to crack the case wide open. By the end of 1985, Christine's disappearance was classified as a cold case. Her absence remained unresolved, her family's grief unrelieved, and the community unsettled. The mystery endured for 40 years, a reminder of both the limits of human memory and the slow evolution of investigative technology. Cold cases, especially those from small towns, often lingered for decades before breakthroughs emerged, and Christine's story was no exception. This chapter demonstrates why so many cold cases remain unsolved. Limited technology, fading memories, and the passage of time create an environment where even dedicated investigators can feel powerless. Yet, as frustrating as this period was, it laid the groundwork for the eventual breakthrough. Every documented lead, every witness statement, and every piece of preserved evidence became part of the foundation that would one day reveal the truth. In the quiet that followed those early months, the unanswered question persisted: who was responsible for Christine's disappearance, and would justice ever be served? For 40 long years, that question haunted investigators, her family, and the community alike. And while the case went cold, the pursuit of answers had only paused. It was never over. Decades passed, and Christine Gallegos' disappearance remained a cold case, filed away in dusty folders and police databases. For 40 years, investigators revisited the case intermittently, hoping new technology might one day illuminate the truth. That day arrived with the rise of forensic genetic genealogy, a tool that would revolutionize cold case investigations. In 2024, detectives partnered with Othram Labs, a cutting-edge facility specializing in extracting DNA from decades-old evidence. The preserved samples from Christine's case, once considered nearly useless, became the cornerstone of a breakthrough. Advanced technology allowed experts to isolate genetic material from tiny traces, amplifying what once seemed impossible. Forensic specialists worked meticulously, testing, retesting, and verifying results with extreme precision. The process involved more than just DNA sequencing. Genetic genealogists began cross-referencing Christine's DNA with public and private genealogy databases, searching for familial connections. This was painstaking work. Every match, no matter how distant, was analyzed, compared, and mapped into family trees. Each connection brought investigators closer to identifying a potential suspect, narrowing the search from a wide pool of unknowns to a single individual. Witness reports from 1985 suddenly gained renewed significance. The dark-colored vehicle, the fleeting glimpses of a driver, and the isolated roads where Christine vanished all became crucial puzzle pieces. Investigators reconstructed the timeline, aligning the genetic data with historical witness accounts. Slowly, a picture emerged, connecting Christine's disappearance to a man previously unknown to authorities. The breakthrough revealed the suspect. Rikilis' genetic matches tied him directly to the crime scene, confirming suspicions that had lingered for decades. Stallworth, however, had passed away in 2023, which meant traditional arrest and trial were impossible. Still, the identification provided long-awaited answers to Christine's family, who had endured 40 years of uncertainty and grief. Investigators didn't stop at identification. They meticulously reviewed Stallworth's background, uncovering connections to other incidents, patterns of behavior, and movements consistent with the timeline of Christine's disappearance. Each detail, from vehicle records to prior interactions, reinforced the accuracy of the genetic match. It was a convergence of old investigative work and modern science that finally brought clarity. The emotional impact was profound. Christine's family, once trapped in decades of limbo, finally had closure. The mystery that had overshadowed their lives was resolved not with a courtroom drama, but through the tireless application of technology, expertise, and determination. For the law enforcement team, it was validation that cold cases could be solved with persistence and innovation. This chapter also illustrates the evolution of investigative techniques. What was once impossible in 1985 became achievable in 2024. Genetic genealogy transformed cold cases, allowing detectives to revisit evidence with a fresh perspective and a new arsenal of tools. The combination of historical diligence and scientific advancement demonstrates the power of patience, expertise, and innovation in the pursuit of justice. Every witness account, every trace of evidence, and every investigative note from 1985 contributed to this breakthrough. The case was no longer just about Christine's disappearance. It was about the relentless pursuit of truth, the power of modern science, and the enduring hope that justice can prevail, even decades later. The intersection of DNA technology and traditional detective work offered more than answers. It offered closure, healing, and proof that no mystery is truly unsolvable. For Christine Gallegos, it meant recognition, remembrance, and finally, the justice her story deserved. The justice her story deserved. With the breakthrough from Othram Labs, investigators finally had a name: Rikilis. The revelation shocked both the law enforcement community and Christine's family. Stallworth had lived a life that, at first glance, appeared ordinary. He worked various jobs, maintained casual social connections, and kept a low profile in his community. Yet beneath this facade, a pattern emerged, one that aligned disturbingly with Christine's disappearance. Detectives began piecing together Stallworth's movements on the night of May 15, 1985. Historical records, vehicle registrations, and witness recollections were meticulously analyzed. Stallworth had been in the area, driving along the roads where Christine was last seen. The dark-colored car described by witnesses matched his vehicle. Even decades later, the corroborating details, locations, timing, and behavior patterns painted a chilling portrait of his actions that night. Stallworth's past also revealed minor infractions and suspicious activities that, while not criminal at the time, became relevant in hindsight. Investigators discovered previous reports of strange encounters with young women along the highways of Utah and neighboring states. Though these incidents had never been linked to him, when combined with the genetic evidence, a consistent behavioral pattern emerged. It confirmed what the community feared, but could not prove for 40 years. Reconstructing the night itself became a key focus. Using witness statements, historical maps, and modern investigative tools, detectives recreated Christine's final moments. The roadside, where she waited, the approach of Stallworth's vehicle, and the sequence of events that led to her murder were mapped with painstaking precision. Each step in the reconstruction highlighted the methodical nature of the crime, as well as the opportunity for Stallworth to act undetected in a sparsely populated area. Though Stallworth had died in 2023, investigators treated the case as if he were alive. Every detail was verified, every lead. This diligence ensured the integrity of the identification and provided Christine's family with undeniable closure. The absence of a trial did not diminish the weight of the discovery. It was the truth that mattered, and the evidence left no room for doubt. The forensic team also examined Stallworth's background for psychological insights. Profilers noted traits consistent with someone who could commit such a violent act while maintaining a seemingly normal life. Calculated, opportunistic, and aware of his surroundings, Stallworth exploited the vulnerabilities of a young woman. Hitchhiking, alone, tragic convergence of circumstances that would have remained unknown without modern science. Family reactions were deeply emotional. Christine's parents, after 40 years of unanswered questions, finally had a name to associate with their grief. The revelation brought both sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the life lost, relief that the mystery had been solved. Friends of Christine reflected on her vibrancy, her kindness, and the cruel twist of fate that had ended her life prematurely. The community, once shadowed by uncertainty, began a slow process of healing. For law enforcement, the case became a testament to perseverance. Officers who had worked on Christine's disappearance decades earlier were reminded of the importance of meticulous documentation, of preserving every lead, and of the potential for science to rewrite the outcome of even the coldest cases. Stallworth's identification demonstrated that time, while it complicates investigations, does not make justice impossible. Even without a courtroom verdict, the story of Christine and Ricky Lee Stallworth stands as a cautionary tale. It shows how a single moment, a decision to hitchhike, a driver's opportunism can ripple across decades. Yet it also affirms the power of technology, persistence, and human determination to uncover the truth. The case was no longer just a cold file. It was a resolved chapter in the ongoing narrative of justice for victims long forgotten. By revealing Stallworth as the perpetrator, investigators closed the loop on 40 years of unanswered questions. The story now shifts from mystery to resolution, from fear to understanding. Christine's life, though tragically cut short, became the catalyst for a remarkable convergence of detective work, modern science, and unwavering dedication to truth. The identification of Ricky Lee Stallworth brought answers, but it also reopened wounds for Christine Gallegos' family. 40 years of uncertainty had shaped every aspect of their lives: the holidays without her laughter, the empty chair at the dinner table, and the unending questions about what had happened. Now, armed with the truth, they faced a complex mix of grief, relief, and a sense of closure that had long eluded them. Her mother, who'd spent decades replaying Christine's last moments in her mind, finally had a tangible answer. The relief was tinged with sorrow, knowing who had taken her daughter did not bring her back. Yet, for the first time, she could mourn with the understanding that Christine's story had been acknowledged, that her daughter had not been forgotten, and that the community now knew the truth. Christine's father experienced a similar mix of emotions. Pride in the investigator's dedication mingled with enduring sadness. He reflected on the years spent advocating for his daughter, writing letters, and reminding authorities not to give up. The confirmation of stalwart, as the perpetrator validated every effort, every sleepless night, and every unanswered plea he had made to the authorities over decades. The younger brother, now an adult, finally understood what had happened the night Christine vanished. The decades of uncertainty that shaped his adolescence and early adulthood were replaced with clarity, though the knowledge of the crime was painful. It allowed him to process grief fully, to understand the truth, and to begin healing from the shadows that had followed his family for so long. The community also felt the impact. Residents who had known Christine, who had joined search parties, and who had whispered about her disappearance for years, were able to reconcile the mystery that had haunted them. Small-town Utah, once gripped by fear and uncertainty, began to feel a sense of closure. People discussed the case openly, shared memories, and acknowledged the resilience of Christine's family and the persistence of law enforcement. Law enforcement officers involved in the investigation were deeply affected as well. Those who had worked on the original case in 1985 were reminded of the value of thorough documentation, patience, and collaboration. The breakthrough using DNA and genealogy techniques reinforced the idea that no case is ever truly cold if investigators remain diligent. It also inspired new strategies for handling other unresolved cases, providing a roadmap for future investigations. For the broader audience, Christine's story highlights the human cost of violent crime and the long shadow it casts over families and communities. It demonstrates how time complicates investigations, but also how persistence and innovation can ultimately provide answers. This chapter of her story is a testament to hope, showing that even decades later, justice and closure are possible. The emotional weight of solving the case cannot be understated. It reminds us that behind every cold case are human lives affected by tragedy, and that solving such cases brings not only justice but a measure of peace to those left behind. Christine's family, once defined by uncertainty, could now begin the slow process of rebuilding their lives without the constant haunting question of who was responsible. Closure also brings hope for others. Families waiting for answers about missing loved ones can take solace in the advancements of forensic technology, the dedication of investigators, and the knowledge that persistence pays off. Christine's story became emblematic of a new era in solving cold cases, a combination of science, detective work, and unwavering human determination. As the community, family, and law enforcement processed the revelation, there was also an important lesson. Grief can coexist with hope. The pain of loss is eternal, but the ability to finally know the truth allows healing to begin. In the story of Christine Gallegos, 40 years of silence were finally broken, and in that breaking, there was light, a chance to honor her memory and to ensure that her life and the tragedy of her death would not be forgotten. This chapter emphasizes that closure is not about erasing grief, but about understanding the truth, reclaiming agency after tragedy, and moving forward while remembering those we have lost. Christine's family, her friends, and her community can finally hold her memory with clarity, dignity, and a renewed sense of justice. The case of Christine Gallegos is more than a story of tragedy. It's a masterclass in the evolution of investigative work. For 40 years, her disappearance tested the limits of traditional police work, community engagement, and the persistence of her family. And yet, the resolution demonstrates that even the oldest and coldest cases can yield to dedication, innovation, and patience. One of the most important lessons is the power of persistence. Investigators in 1985 documented every detail meticulously, from witness statements to vehicle sightings, knowing that the answers might not be immediate. This groundwork, often undervalued at the time, became the backbone of the breakthrough. Decades later, the painstaking record-keeping illustrates that no detail is too small, and even minor observations can become critical in unraveling mysteries years later. Technology, of course, played a transformative role. The advent of forensic genetic genealogy allowed investigators to do what was impossible in 1985. Extract DNA from decades-old evidence and identify familial connections. The work of Othram Labs demonstrates the revolutionary impact of science on criminal investigations. DNA technology bridged the gap between historical investigation and modern forensic capability, turning decades of frustration into actionable results. Another key takeaway is the synergy between human intuition and scientific precision. Investigators combined witness accounts, historical timelines, and modern DNA analysis to create a complete picture of the crime. Each component was essential. Technology alone could not solve the case without the diligent groundwork laid by officers in 1985. Similarly, witness statements and historical investigation were significantly enhanced by modern forensic tools. The case also underscores the importance of community involvement. Small-town vigilance, neighborly concern, and family advocacy kept Christine's story alive over decades. While the passage of time created challenges, it also ensured that the case remained a priority, illustrating that community engagement is a critical element in solving cold cases. Christine's story reminds us that justice is not always immediate, but it is attainable. Even when suspects are no longer alive to face trial, identification provides closure, accountability, and validation for victims' families. This outcome challenges the misconception that unresolved cases are permanently lost. Persistence and technological progress can rewrite the narrative, even decades later. For law enforcement agencies, the case highlights the need for interdisciplinary collaboration. Detectives, forensic scientists, genealogists, and data analysts all contributed to resolving the mystery. It is a blueprint for handling future cold cases. Meticulous documentation, embracing technological innovation, and cross-specialty collaboration are essential ingredients in achieving justice. The psychological impact of closure cannot be overstated. Families living with uncertainty experience ongoing trauma, often spanning generations. Solving a case provides not only answers but a path to emotional healing. Christine's parents, her younger brother, and her community could finally begin processing grief in a tangible, constructive way. Closure allows healing while honoring the memory of the lost individual. Moreover, Christine's case demonstrates the importance of adaptability and investigative strategy. Methods that worked in the 1980s, while effective at the time, were limited by technology. Modern investigators learn to reinterpret old evidence with new tools, showing that flexibility, creativity, and the willingness to revisit cold information are vital in solving complex cases. Finally, the story teaches a universal truth. Time does not erase justice. While decades of silence and uncertainty may feel insurmountable, persistent investigation, technological innovation, and human determination can ultimately prevail. Christine's case is a testament to hope, a blueprint for future cold cases, and a reminder that no victim should be forgotten. In reflecting on this investigation, it becomes clear that every step from meticulous record-keeping to cutting-edge genetic analysis was essential. The lessons of Christine Gallegos' case resonate not just in Utah, but worldwide, emphasizing that cold cases, no matter how long, are never truly beyond reach. Justice, persistence, and innovation can bring light even to the darkest, most forgotten corners of human tragedy. 40 years after Christine Gallegos vanished, her story has become more than a cold case. It has evolved into a legacy of resilience, hope, and the power of persistence. The resolution of her disappearance provides closure, but it also leaves a lasting mark on law enforcement, her community, and families facing similar tragedies. Her life, though tragically cut short, now carries lessons and inspiration for generations to come. Christine's legacy begins with her family. For decades, they endured the pain of unanswered questions, the uncertainty that shadowed every decision, every holiday, and every milestone. Now, armed with the truth about Ricky Lee Stallworth, they can honor her memory with clarity, the ability to grieve fully, to remember her life rather than just her disappearance, is a gift born of decades-long dedication and modern forensic breakthroughs. Her story has also impacted the law enforcement community. Investigators who worked on the original case in 1985 and those involved in the DNA breakthrough decades later share a rare sense of fulfillment. It demonstrates the value of diligence, meticulous documentation, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Christine's case serves as a model for solving cold cases, proving that no matter how much time passes, science and perseverance can converge to illuminate the truth. Communities, especially small towns like Provo, have also learned from this case. Christine's disappearance highlighted vulnerabilities and emphasized the importance of vigilance, community support, and collaboration with law enforcement. Her story is a reminder that every missing person matters, that a single life can influence a whole town, and that awareness can prevent future tragedies. 4 families of missing persons. Christine's case is a beacon of hope. The advancements in DNA technology and genetic genealogy demonstrate that even decades-old mysteries can be solved. Her story reassures them that answers can come, sometimes in ways they never imagined, and that patience, advocacy, and persistence are critical in the search for justice. Christine's case also changed how cold cases are approached nationwide. Agencies began to preserve evidence more carefully, maintain detailed records, and consider genetic genealogy in unresolved investigations. Her disappearance, once a tragedy confined to a single town, influenced law enforcement protocols and inspired new methods for tackling cold cases across the United States. The emotional resonance of a story cannot be understated. Christine's friends, neighbors, and community members are now able to reconcile the fear and uncertainty that gripped them for decades. Her memory is no longer defined solely by tragedy. It is defined by the collective effort to seek justice, the advancement of investigative science, and the demonstration of human perseverance in the face of overwhelming odds. Finally, Christine Gallegos' story is a reminder of the fragility and value of life. It emphasizes the importance of safety, awareness, and the impact of even seemingly small decisions. Her disappearance and the eventual resolution underscore how a community, working alongside dedicated professionals and emerging technologies, can transform a tragic loss into a story of closure, hope, and learning. As we reflect on Christine's life and the decades-long pursuit of justice, it is clear that her story leaves a legacy far beyond her years. It is a testament to the enduring human desire for answers, the power of science in service of truth, and the unbreakable bond between families, communities, and the pursuit of justice. Christine's memory now stands as a beacon symbol of resilience, dedication, and the ultimate triumph of truth over decades of uncertainty. Her life, though brief, continues to inspire, educate, and remind us that even in the darkest mysteries, hope and justice can prevail. The case of Christine Gallegos is no longer just a story of disappearance. It is a legacy of remembrance, closure, and the unwavering pursuit of truth.